No problem.
Hi, I'm Michael Jakubiak, founder of The Accent, and I would like to welcome our today's guest,
Benjamin.
Benjamin Williamson. You know what? I always prepare myself to get a very nice introduction, to research how to actually introduce my guests. But Benjamin's got loads of titles, and I would like to leave it to you, to introduce. You can tell me something, a couple of sentences about yourself, and introduce yourself fully.
Yeah, well, that's easy. I own a farm in Denmark.
Yeah.
And it is the first recognized certified carbon neutral farm in Northern Europe.
All right.
If you believe the hearsay, the first fully certified CO2 neutral farm anywhere. But there are a few things going on in Australia and whatnot that it's probably best not to make claims as large as the one that I just made, simply because there is a bit of contention as to how other companies are certifying their carbon activities. We are fully transparent. We're Scope 3 certified, and we are unequivocally carbon neutral, as it were.
So, what is the most proud of things you've done in your career?
What's the most proud thing I've done in my career? Gosh, I was asked this question when I was being interviewed by Cisco for an IT job about 20 years ago.
We don't talk about the IT. I don't want this from you. You see, no, I don't interview for IT.
No. But I was asked this, and my answer lost me the job.
Your answer lost the job?
Oh, yeah, no. Because I don't measure my successes in terms of money. So, and that's what they were looking for.
I ask you for what you're proud of. You don't need to be proud of for something which is money-wise.
No, well, that's the point. I'm not really proud. None of the things that I have done have ever made really lots of money. Mm-hmm. I've managed to keep moving forward and been quite successful in what I do, but I've never made. I've lost millions of Danish kroner, about £500,000 I've lost, but I think I spent it wisely. So, and I still have the majority of what I spent it on. So I've spent a lot of time developing this certification system, and I've spent a lot of time working on being, I suppose I have 8 targets achieved we have 14 specific paragraphs across the 17 Sustainable Development Goals paradigm and agenda. And out of those, I think there are 256 paragraphs broken down into the categories that represent each target. We have 8 specific targets achieved, academically verified, both in Denmark and here in the UK. I was at an SDG conference on Friday, and out of those 8 targets, we've achieved or we have compliance with 14 different paragraphs across those 8 targets. So for some of the targets that we've achieved in our business, our umbrella business, we have more than one. We've achieved more than one target or goal, or however you want to call it. And that's cost a lot of money. And I think so. I suppose you could say I'm very proud of the money I've spent, but I'm more along the lines of I'm very proud of what I've been able to do with the money that I've had, because I've not had an unlimited supply. It sounds like a lot of money, but we're talking over 15 years. So yes, so I suppose that's it. That's the thing. I'm most proud of the fact that I am uncompromisingly society, ecology, and economy focused.
I see that. So there is one thing to follow this up then. So why are we even here? What's this podcast about? If you haven't seen the last episode, so what I've noticed is that as when I speak with so many neurodivergent people, especially those who are late diagnosed or those who late find out that they're neurodivergent, it's usually the story that we're finding out about neurodiversity by hearing about how the traits actually present themselves in a day-to-day life. So that's why every episode was a different guest who had a different impact for the different communities, more recognizable in different communities. So hopefully someone will hear the stories about how our traits present themselves in the day-to-day life. So maybe it may spark a curiosity in you, because there is a 350 million undiagnosed adults with conditions like autism, ADHD, or dyslexia. So hence this podcast, to hopefully spark some curiosity in you, to hear some interesting stories about how our traits present themselves in the day-to-day life. So maybe we may be able to help you. So the follow-up question with this will be, how did you find out? How did you find out?
How did I find out? Well, let me tell you this. Okay, let's get straight to the point. When I was, and this is England now we're talking about. I've spent 20 years in Denmark, but we're talking about England now. So let's go back 35 years, 36 years to when I was 14 years old and studying for my GCSEs. I was one of the first, second or third year of students in the comprehensive system to go from GCEs and O levels, which was the old system, to GCSEs, which was the modern system at the time. And this is back in the days when it was the fifth form and the sixth form, not years 7, 8, 9, 10, and so on and so forth. My mum is or was a superhead. She was the head teacher of the largest school in Buckinghamshire, and the head teacher responsible for the other head teachers in Buckinghamshire County. She's also won a national prize for being good at something. I'm not quite sure what, but being good at something in relation to her career. And my grandmother was also a school teacher. And so when it came to me doing my GCSEs, there was very little known about dyslexia at the time. And I was quite high functioning, and I performed quite highly in class, and I know a lot of stuff. So my predicted examination results and my actual performance were vastly different. So I would be predicted A's and I would end up with D's and E's. And at the time, if I had been diagnosed with dyslexia, it would have been prohibitive. I would have been streamlined into one of the lower classes in English, and I wouldn't have been able to achieve a grade C in English GCSE, which would have meant I would not have been allowed to go to university. So my mum, my grandmother, and the head of the English department at my school cheated in my English exams. So I did all of my English exams in a controlled environment with the national moderator, and then afterwards I was taken into a quiet room in the library with the head of the English department, a selection of different types of pen, Tipp-Ex, and we went through all of my controlled state examinations and corrected them all so that I could achieve the grade C so that I could go to university.
Jesus.
Yeah, so that's...
Thank God you could have this.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was then. And then about 10 years ago, whilst I was living in Denmark, I decided that I did a degree I started doing maths and theoretical physics at UCL, but then my father died and I had to leave for personal reasons. And then a few years later, I went back and studied computer systems at Oxford Brookes. And I graduated there in 1999. And then a few years later, moved to Denmark. And so about 10 years ago, I decided I would maybe wanted to go back and study at university again in Denmark. So I started to go on the journey of finding out what qualifications I needed to study at university in Denmark, and I ended up in exactly the same situation. They tested me for what is the GCSE equivalent in Denmark. I failed it miserably, and the lady, after I'd done the exam, was very, very rude to me. So I ended up screaming and shouting at her in her office, in the main school building where everybody could hear, for about 10 minutes, until she accepted that there might actually be something wrong with me and that I should be tested. So I was then tested, and then they found out that I was quite severely dyslexic. And then after that, I did a very integrated national test for dyslexia in Denmark, and within that they measure phonetic coding. Now the scale for dyslexia as a qualifying category in Denmark goes from 74 to 88. So if you're in between 74, if you have a phonetic coding score between 74 and 88, then you're classified as dyslexic. If you have a score from between 88 and 100, then you face phonetic coding challenges. And if you have a score above 100, then you have no problem. I score 67 on that scale. So I'm men had dumped is what you say in Danish, which sounds like you've taken a short visit to the little boys' room, but it means I failed. Not really. But so then I was given computer programs, extra time, special education classes that I did for 6 months, and then I went from failing the GCSE Danish to getting 97% in my Danish GCSE exam. I then did 4 A-levels in Danish and got A stars in all of my A-levels. And when I'd done my A-levels, I was actually on the Oxford and Cambridge fast track at school. Me, my best friend, who's still the CTO in my company today, and a couple of girls who were going to Cambridge. We were the only 4 selected out of our whole school for the Oxford and Cambridge track, because that's how it works. And I got the lowest score in the history of the Oxford University. It is sort of a claim to fame in itself, because they don't normally let people as dumb as me get anywhere near the entrance exam. So I've always faced this. A lot of my friends seem to think that I'm also on the autism spectrum, but not enough that I think I should even engage in a diagnosis, because the biggest challenge I face is my dyslexia and how it presents, because I have.
So how it presents in a day-to-day life? Give us a couple of examples. Like when you don't know, need to feel some. Tell me, like, what you need to do. Like,
I get lost. I get lost on the train.
You get lost on the train?
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Because I can't figure out what stop I'm on, or what stop I'm supposed to be getting on, and what stop I'm supposed to be getting off at. So it doesn't. If I have a Tesla Model S, thank God. If I didn't have a Tesla, I wouldn't be able to get anywhere, because I literally, when I have to go anywhere, I literally. And it really upsets everybody, because I'm like, please send me the postcode. I'm like, can't you just? And I'm like, no, please send me the. No, can you? I was like, if you want me to come, send me the postcode. If you don't send me the postcode, I won't come. And they're like, okay, I'll find you the postcode. Then they find me the postcode. I type the postcode into the car, and then the car would get me there. If it wasn't for Tesla, and if it wasn't for their sophisticated navigation system, I wouldn't know where I was and what I was doing. So for the majority of people who. Well, I mean, this is where it gets really, really strange, because when I meet people for the first time, I just say, I can't read and write. And it just kind of, it's such a shocking thing to say that people just, it's the same. I can't spell my own name. I've never been able to spell my own name.
But I'm not surprised, you know, it's like this big.
Yeah, but I can't.
Like
I know,
3 names,
yeah, but,
4 surnames,
but
5 titles.
Benjamin. I still have trouble spelling Benjamin. You know, Ben I can just about do. Although saying that, I did spell G-O-W once. So it's that kind of a thing. It's the structure with which human beings navigate our reality. Buses, trains, lifts, entrances, banks, pretty much everything that we do is structured around an understanding of how language is formulated, how instructions are transmitted, and how signs and communication is relayed whilst people are on the go.
When you say about this, sorry for this, I just, you know, I never thought about this way, but very often what's happened to me, I'm dyslexic as well, but I was like, in Polish, I was thought that my dyslexia is focused on the letters, so that was my problem.
Right.
It's focused on the extra letters were in a Polish alphabet.
Yeah.
That was my problem.
Right.
And I've noticed here, it's happened, now when you say that multiple times, I get into the tram, thinking that I'm getting to the right tram, and I'm in the wrong tram.
Yes.
And that happens
often.
Very often.
Yeah.
And I was saying, how it's happened? It was written this destination.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah,
It's just
It's, well, what it turns out, because because I'm a bit of a nerd, and I'd like to, and I never used neurodiversity as an excuse for not being able to achieve it. I got to UCL, I got to Oxford, not the real one, but I got to Oxford anyway, and I've been in real Oxford many times, and a lot of the people that I work with are exceptionally gifted academics, and the more exceptionally gifted the academic, the easier it is for me to communicate with them. But what I've realized is that to truly understand the challenges that I face, I need to engage with my disability. So I go often to a center in the hospital in Denmark called the Communication, I can't remember what it's called in Danish right now, CTX, I think, Communication Center. And there's a wonderful lady there called Henrietta who's helping me integrate this new piece of software that they've just developed, which is called Interwords, and structure the software's parameters so that it helps, so that it supports me best. But coming back to your question about the tram, it's about this phonetic coding thing has many, many attributes, and one of the main ones is word class. Understanding word class and understanding that, now I understand a lot about set theory and mathematics, and so I've been able to integrate a mathematical understanding of numbers and associate that with something my brain doesn't actually do. But normal brains, neurally typical brains, do this naturally, and they sort of categorize words. And so they understand what a noun is intrinsically. They understand what a verb is intrinsically. And when they're presented with a new word or a new concept, it fits neatly into a structure in their brain that is preeminent. I think that's the right word. And whereas I don't have.
We'll see the comments after.
Yeah. Correct me all you like, it ain't going to change anything. And how the inability to function with language in terms of class and in terms of structure in that way, it means that neurally diverse people have to find other ways to make those connections. They have to remember other strategies, and they use a unique, so they're specific to one set of trams, for example, or one set of junctions on a motorway, or one set of expectations in a bank procedure, or whatever it is. So they're not they're not transferable skills. You can't learn how to do it once and then use it again and again in many different situations, where people who are neurally typical can. And I've noticed lots of people getting very upset with me for not being able to do what to them seems easy and obvious. And I'm 50 years old now, so
you can say about it will work both ways, you know. You'll think that there will be some frustrated neurodivergent individuals. I can feel about myself when I think it's something so easy, why someone cannot sort this? And then I'm thinking it's easy for me. It's not easy for you or them.
Well, that's what makes us so successful, and that's what makes us. That's where our value is in communities and in the world, because we have toiled through life, finding ways of making sense of what to us seems pointless nonsense, because we have no personal relationship to it. So we build understanding and frameworks and structure around that nonsense so that we can survive. And out of that nonsense emerges solutions to problems that neurally typical people just couldn't imagine, because they're so locked into that framework and structure of thinking that is the collective consciousness, in a sense.
So do you find there is a difference between the way that Denmark and UK handle dyslexia, at least from your experience?
Well, I mean,
so in the sense that if there are differences, do you think was something which is worth to mention in a sense that maybe this is something worth work on or copying?
Being exclusivist and being intolerant to difference, whether it be sexual difference, gender difference, intelligence difference, creative difference, neurodivergent difference, being intolerant of any of that is anti-democratic. And Denmark prides itself on being a social democracy, albeit sometimes popularist, right-wing social democracy, but nevertheless there is quite a lot of national pride in that democratic opinion or process. And so even the most harsh opponent to my personality and my desires and my expectations, still even that person is quite easy to explain to that person that their rights stem from the same place that my rights stem from, and if they are infringing upon my rights, then they're also infringing upon their own rights. That's a much more complicated conversation in the UK, because there is a certain amount of sacrifice required to live in a true democracy.
You answer like a true politician, you know? So what's the actual answer, Benji?
I don't know. What was the question? I forget. It's Monday morning and I'm out of coffee, goddammit.
I will start using this podcast, and I spoke to a true politician today. Did you get the answer?
What was the question?
What was the question?
The question was
what is
the difference between how my dyslexia has been
treated or
handled in Denmark, and how it was treated in England. It was handled and treated in Denmark democratically. So I was treated like a normal human being, whereas in England I have to turn myself into a horrible monster for anybody to even look at me or listen to me, which causes other problems, because then when I arrive at a fantastic place like this, I arrive as a monster, and people are like, why is there a monster in the court? Why is there monsters in the front entrance? What does he want? And I'm like, this is just a mask. So it's I don't know. I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? You know, you have to be yourself. And there's a beautiful piece of software in English for people that have dyslexia called Dragon Naturally Speaking.
Dragon naturally speaking.
Yeah, and that's the English approach. You know.
Have you tested it?
Yes, I use it quite often. It's a really, really good piece of software.
So, will be fair to say, are you taking responsibility to recommend this software to our listeners?
It's very expensive. I think it's about £600
a year for a license.
No, I think it's I got mine. I got mine 8 years ago, and I haven't had to upgrade the license. The other software I have, the Danish one, I get a license from that paid for by the government, but then I have to, report back and get interviewed and explain, and that costs about £300 or £400, depending on the exchange rate. It's 3,500 Danish crowns. And I get that for 3 years at a time, and then I have to go and apply again, and then they give me a new code so I can license. So I get a new license every 3 years. So the Dragon Naturally Speaking one is, once you've got it and the code, it's yours for life. But I don't know.
All right, so it's like a one-off fee.
Well, again, to be honest with you, I haven't tried installing it on I need a new computer, and we're in the startup world, so you know how expensive things are and how little money we have. So I haven't upgraded my computer yet. So to be brutally honest, the only thing on my computer is Into Words, which is MV Nordic's platform for dyslexic integration, and it's fabulous. But it's too heavy for the computer that I've got, so my computer can't quite cope with it. Neither can my phone. So that's the challenge I had. I literally was at the hospital on Tuesday the 9th at 9 o'clock before leaving and driving to England last Tuesday afternoon. So the last appointment I had before I left was with the communication centre of the hospital to figure out whether this new piece of software was actually working for me. So I'm proactively engaged in trying to move forward, not use the neurodiversity as an excuse for not being able to achieve anything that I want to achieve, and getting the most I can possibly get out of, being awesome.
So in terms of the support tools,
yes,
tell me a bit more about it, because I never had both of those software you mentioned. I never had anything of this. So don't get me wrong. For me, it's like what I'm using. It's pretty common. Everyone using like Grammarly or AI.
Right.
So that's my coping mechanism.
Right.
So what's your coping mechanism?
Well, my coping mechanism is multifaceted because I'm quite fast, so I work quite quickly. So I have a 4-tier system.
Imagine there is a John there, and John would like to hear this, or Karen.
Maybe not Karen.
Maybe not Karen.
In fact, actually, poor Karen. You know what I mean?
All of those Karens, they're great as well. We need Karens as well.
Well, what we need is no more antisocial behaviour. Is what we need, and whether somebody who is being antisocial in their behaviour has a label associated with them, I think maybe we should remove those labels and maybe approach this from the point of view of what's motivating that person to be socially are antisocial in their behaviour, and that's not Karen's fault.
That's not Karen's fault, absolutely. But what I meant is, let's imagine we've got a John there, and John would like to hear, okay, I don't use anything, I've got dyslexia, what I can do? From my side, Grammarly and AI, use it, it's super helpful, but for everyone it will be something else. So what's your coping mechanism? What
I do is I have 2 screens when I'm working.
Okay.
And I'm so busy now that I found that I'm probably going to need 3 screens. So what I will normally do is if there's something I have to refer back to, like an acronym or a legal phrase or something related to business, then I will split my spare window into 4 and then have 4 documents open that I can quickly refer back to whilst I'm working, so that I have at my feet. So I prepare a lot. So I set myself up and I consider in detail what am I going to need today and how much of the things that I know I can't do, because I've got lots of experience in falling down, you know, so I know that's going to happen if I don't have that ready, so I'll put that there, make it ready. So I do a lot of preparation. So it can sometimes take me a day or 2 days to prepare for a situation where I know I'm going to need extra support, and then I find that using the utilities that are available to me. Microsoft is great, and you're about to run out of power.
I am, but we also got 2 minutes left on the bottom.
Good, right. Super. So I use Microsoft Dictation and Microsoft Read Aloud. So that's mainly what I do. The software that I work with provides me with all kinds of different spell checkings and a grammar selection, and it's a very sophisticated piece of software. And so what I will do is I will write what I need to write at the speed that I feel comfortable with, and then I will cut and paste it out of where I am into a document. I will spell check it and grammar check it in that document. If there's something that the spell checker can't figure out what is, then I'll go onto Google and I will Google it, and I will try and find out if there's another way of spelling it or if it has any other meanings. I'll click on to read aloud in Google so that I can get, and then I'm certain of the word. I'll then check synonyms to make sure that I've not just assumed that it's the right word, but that the other words that are synonyms of it equate to it. I'll then cut that back into the document that I'm working on. I'll do one last grammar and spell check on it, and then I'll cut and paste that into what I'm working with. Yeah.
That sounds like a good coping strategy if it works for you.
Well, it's the problem with it is education and an examination says that all of that is cheating.
Well, it's not cheating; it's leveling up, and that's very important.
That's my point.
It's leveling up, and I think loads of people missing the trick. So why we've got all this not extra support? It's to level us up. So we're starting from exactly the same place, like neurotypical. And I would love to carry on with these conversations with you. However, we've got also certain amount of attention span now in society. So there is a certain amount of time we can talk and people can actually listen. There's a couple of things I will add in terms of dyslexia, which you probably know. I don't know if you knew about it or not, but depending on the language and a region, sometimes dyslexia is present, sometimes it's not. What I mean by that for example, in Chinese language, dyslexia is not present because of it's a picturesque language. In Polish language, for example, there's our additional type of dyslexia because we've got extra letters in our alphabet. So depending on the language, how it's structured, that's how dyslexia perceive themselves in a more or less type of variation. And with this little accent, thank you very much, Benjamin. Right honorable gentleman, Benjamin, James,
Williamson-Westerman.
Lovely meeting you. Hope you get something out of this podcast. Hope you find something which may help you as well. And enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Thank you very much.
Cool. That was pretty okay.